Hey, what's going on, Eric? Welcome back. I hope you don't mind the sweatshirt today, the Heroes Guy sweatshirt, because it's a little bit cold down here in Florida, and I have to sit outside. My daughter has a track meet, so later on I'm going to be going to watch FBC do well.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you taking this time out of your busy day. I think we're going to do some myth busting today, right? Talking about some stuff on the VA loan.
Plain and simple, Eric. Yep, because there's one question you and I get all the time.
All the time. So with the VA loan, I'm coming in with zero down payment. Now, are there any other costs? Because I'm getting a lot of questions all the time from buyers saying, hey, what do you mean I have to pay closing costs? Or I thought it was all just zero down, that's it. Can you help me out?
Veterans and service members, right? When they're buying a house, they hear this myth that VA, they don't need any money for closing. And that can be the case. However, there are three things that basically, when anybody in the country really buys a house, there are three things that are required of them from a mortgage lender, right? The first one, down payment, right? I'm making it big because last time people couldn't see it. But for VA, do you see those big zero numbers? VA requires zero down payment. So that's what VA does. So let's use an example, Eric. If Eric was buying a $100,000 house and Eric, being a veteran himself, decides to get a VA mortgage, you have no money that you have to put down in that house, Eric. So I actually will, as a lender, will lend you $100,000 so you can buy the house.
Wow, that's very nice. Thank you.
You're welcome. So secondly, we got the second thing, right, Eric? There's a nasty word called closing cost, right? Now, you notice that number is there's nothing in there yet. It's going to depend on the state that you live in, okay? Closing time fees that are associated when somebody is buying a house, okay? So if a veteran is buying a house, in the state of Florida, there's things like title insurance, right? Title insurance, they go back and check to make sure whoever has ever owned that house before, that all the liens on the house are clear. There's other things. There's certain kind of taxes. Like I'm from Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, there's a transfer tax. It's actually 1% of the sales price. So if we use that $100,000 example, it's $1,000, right? Well, guess what, Eric? Those costs aren't something the VA is going to finance. Those costs are true tangible costs that the veteran might have to pay. However, if the veteran is working with somebody like Eric and Katie or anybody else that is out there that are really strong real estate partners and understand VA, they can negotiate that the seller pay those costs for them. So Eric, you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, lender fees, so that really helps us get close to no more than 3% of the purchase price for closing costs. And so that's a really nice thing to have. And that's kind of where we're at right now with that.
Awesome. Okay, let's talk about the third thing that a lender looks for, right? I have to find it. I mixed up my sheets here. Of course, I lost it. Okay, here it is. Prepaid items. Eric, this is a third thing that lenders require people to pay. Okay, now when I say prepaid items, you notice it says taxes, insurance, and interest. Okay, prepaid items are basically what the veteran or service member is going to do is set up an account. Well, they're not going to set up an account. The mortgage company is going to set up an account where their property taxes and their homeowner's insurance or fire insurance is going to actually be put into an account so that next year, when those items come out, those bills come out, there's money sitting in that account so those things can be paid. So that money up front, okay, there's a certain amount that the lender is going to collect depending on the date that the veteran actually settles, okay? Now, what happens once you have those three things, Eric, there is zero for down payment, there's a certain amount of money for closing costs, and there's a certain money for prepaid items, right? So that means there's a total amount needed. So let's just use a simple number, just a round number. Let's pretend that total needed was $5,000, okay? Eric, as a professional real estate agent and somebody that works with VA all the time, if I told you, Eric, Mr. and Mrs. Veteran buyer are looking to buy a house and they're going to need about $5,000 for closing, what would you do with that number that I just told you?
So let's see. So you need $5,000 for closing cost assistance.
So this bottom line number here, this number here, all these things added up equal $5,000 that veteran needs. And unfortunately, that veteran just PCS'd or they just moved to the area. They don't have a lot of savings. So Eric, as a realtor, you basically can do what with the seller?
So there's a couple options. There's depends on why the closing costs are so expensive, or the lender that they're going with. Is it because the lender's fees are expensive and they're charging them that on top of the closing costs? And so what we'll do is that, well, hey, maybe you want to talk to a different lender that helps out. I know like you and your company really helps out that closing costs. So that, and then we can negotiate closing costs into the contract. So let's say on a $200,000 house, if you need $4,000 or $5,000 in closing cost assistance, I mean, we can negotiate that and have the seller cover it.
That's the point I was getting to right there. Sorry to cut you off, but literally you can need zero for closing if you have a good real estate agent that understands VA. And when they're negotiating, like you said, $200,000 house, Eric, you might go and tell a seller, hey, Mr. Seller, my veteran is willing to pay $200,000 for the house that you're selling, but you have to give them a credit back of $5,000. So in theory, what happens is a veteran's really getting a house for $195,000. However, the sales price, it's $200,000. The seller's giving a credit, and then basically the veteran's getting in for that big fat zero number, Eric. And the neat thing about that, like you were saying with Heroes First Home Loans, zero lender fees. So for some reason we like the number zero. I wish interest rates could be zero, but yeah. So we wanted this to be a really brief overview because I know our last video was long. Eric, any kind of wrap up you want to talk about?
I just want to make sure that people that are listening into, it's like you can't. There's not an infinite amount you can ask for in closing costs because in the VA loan, what is it, 4% that you can technically give back?
You really want this to go long, don't you? No. So actually, there is a myth buster, another myth buster. It's actually not a myth, but VA, there is a written rule about VA allowing for 4% seller assist. Now, the thing is, especially in the state of Florida where we're at right now, and actually in Pennsylvania too, where I'm from, the seller assist that actually a realtor can ask from the buyer, or I'm sorry, from the seller, really won't exceed that number in most cases. Now, what happens though, that 4% can go towards certain things, but your tangible costs, like your normal closing costs and stuff, aren't really included in that 4% calculation. So in theory, all the fees or all the different things, these different ones here, the closing costs and the prepaid items, they basically could be covered totally by the seller. Now, if you're in a state that taxes are ridiculously high, sorry, New Jersey, but taxes are really high there, that's a situation where you might go over that percentage amount and then you're kind of out of luck. But in the state of Florida, in the state of Pennsylvania, where I'm originally from, basically, Eric, they're pretty much the seller can pay everything.
Okay, well, that's good to know because I know we run into that a lot, so that's good information to have, especially for our sellers when we're helping them negotiate when a veteran buyer comes in and they're asking for closing cost assistance because, hey, we're all trying to help them out too,
Totally. And, let's crack this up one last time, though, is that the number one thing is VA does not finance closing costs, okay? So veterans and service members that are out there, you want to work with a professional real estate agent like Eric, Katie, depending on the area you're moving to, and you want to make sure they understand the negotiating part of VA. So when they're putting in your offer, they can negotiate that these costs, the closing costs and the prepaid items can get, paid for by the seller. So you can get in your house for nothing.
Okay.
So, all right, Eric, I think that was short enough for us this time, right?
Yeah, I think we went a little long, but hey, you know what? A lot of great information was being put out. So.
Wear a sweatshirt, got a lot of paperwork. So,
yeah.
All right, brother. Well, hey, to everybody out there, we thank you for your service, and definitely, we like to honor individuals, and just give us a call if you have any questions.
Yeah. All right. Take care.
See you later. Bye-bye.